gonna wear a poodle dress, a poodle skirt. You got one?
All right, folks. How are you all doing today?
That's great.
Doing great? Awesome.
We had poodle skirts.
Okay, let's get started. Today I'm really excited about today because today we're going to talk about competing with the other broker. And I'm going to share with you some tips and techniques, some strategies about how to compete with another agent when you're on a listing appointment. You know, we often say that other broker, they make things tough for us sometimes when they say to the seller, I'll do it for less, right? I'll price it higher. I'll take it for a shorter term. I can get you more money than the other broker, right? This is what they say when they're trying to get the listing from you, and sometimes they succeed at it, right? Sometimes the other broker gets the listing. Well, I'm going to share with you some techniques and ideas today that will help you to turn the table so that now you get the listing rather than they do. And you know, the other broker, sometimes we beat the other broker up so much, you know, we say all these things about the other broker and all that, but you know, how many agree that the other broker, they have a tough job too, don't they? Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, they've got it rough also. You know, it reminds me of the broker that he'd work 18 hours a day, and then he'd go home to his family, and then he'd spend another 6 hours doing paperwork. And the little boy said to his mom, "Mom, why does Daddy have to work at home all the time?" She says, "Well, he's got so much that he can't finish it during the day at work. He has to bring it home and finish it at home as well." And he looked there a little confused for a second. He said, "Well, maybe they should put him in a slower group." Right? And so, you know, so let's stop picking on the other broker and let's think about some great ways that we can move forward and help you get the listing over them. All right? Now, one of the things that I'm really excited about is I spent some time last night putting together some really great tools that you're literally going to be able to take with you today and use it because you're in Western Massachusetts and Hampden County. You're going to be able to use it today. Okay? So I've done a lot of work for you. For those of you watching the video, you've got a little bit of homework that you need to complete, and once you complete that, it'll pay off in a huge amount in terms of the amount of effort that you have to put into it versus what you're going to get out of it is going to be unbelievable.
So you were working at night.
Oh yes,
That
I was.
Very nice.
He wasn't in the slower group.
I
Did
need
your
to
son
be in a
say
slower
something?
group. He was sleeping. Hey, listen, if you could fly first class to coach for the same fare, where would you fly? Be honest.
First
First class. I would too, right? Whenever a seller wants to comparison shop before listing, you should A, furnish them with a list of other companies. B, ask if you can sit in on their presentation.
Yeah, right?
Ooh, wouldn't that be nice, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if that would work, right? Show them your prepared chart of companies with a comparison of services
C.
offered.
See.
C, that's a great idea. I'll make sure we cover that.
If we can do it.
Yes. Judy, could I ask you for a small favor? Could you turn that light on right behind you there? It's just a little button on the base of the light.
Here? No.
It's right at the top of the bulb.
Oh.
There you go. Excellent. Thank you so much. I just realized that.
You
That's
want that?
perfect. Yes.
Oh, now you're in the
Yeah.
spotlight.
Thank you very much. Right. Thank you. So number 3, which sellers best know the difference between listing a house and actually selling it? A, all sellers. B, those on the expired list. Or C, for sale by owners.
B.
A.
Which sellers best know?
C.
B.
B.
The answer is B. Yes. Number 2, when the seller says a competing broker offers a lower commission, A, show them your listings expire less often. B, tell them that you will negotiate at closing. Or C, call the other broker on the spot and find out,
I like
is
C.
this true? I have you on speakerphone right now in
I
front of
like
the
that
seller
one.
and I want to know, did you really say that? Which item is it? What's the
B.
answer?
A.
A.
The answer is A, that is correct.
Oh.
Number 1, when the seller says a competing broker will list at a higher price, A, turn down the listing. B, show them that your listings sell for a higher percentage of their list price than your competitors. Or C, offer to take it at a higher price if they agree to reduce it later.
B.
B.
B. C.
B.
B.
B is correct.
I was close.
The B's have it. You were close. You were one letter off. Oh my goodness.
That should count.
It should count, absolutely.
Half credit.
That's right, absolutely. So, here's the scoop, gang. We're gonna get right into it today, okay? One of the very valuable things that you're going to walk out of here today with is the fact that you're going to be a different agent. What I'd like you to do right now is turn to the person next to you, shake their hand, and say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye. I'm going
Bye,
to
Jack.
see you.
The reason why I ask you to do that is that you're going to walk out of here a different agent than you when you walked in here. People aren't gonna know. You're gonna have to reintroduce yourself to all your friends and family because you're going to be a completely different person. The reason being is that you're going to have a skill. Again, this is a workshop, and if you're watching the DVD, I'm gonna ask you to do some work as well. And we're not gonna do any role playing today. Instead, I came up with a different idea, a great idea. It's completely different than role playing. Instead of role playing, what we're gonna do is we're gonna read the dialogues to each other instead, okay?
Yeah, that'll be different.
That'd be real different.
Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. And, but before we do that, we're gonna review the dialogues first, and I'd like you to read along with me. Then what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to read it out loud with me, and then I'd like you to very quickly read it to each other so that we're actually hearing it and saying it 4 times, it's going through my, the reason being is that if we do this today, right now, and if you do this while you're watching the video, what will happen is you'll walk away from this class knowing not every word verbatim, but you'll know enough so that if you get hit with this objection this weekend or early next week, you'll have memorized enough of this so that you could actually use it. Okay, gang? Now, if the seller says to you, I want to interview a few different companies for the job of marketing my home, and how often does that happen in this market?
All the
All
time.
the time.
That's what I've been hearing, yeah, I've been hearing all the time, right? Even, you know what I've heard recently, actually, there was actually one agent in our office who did a fantastic job for the seller when they bought their home, but it wasn't a given that they would get the listing. They wanted to interview that agent, even though that agent did a fantastic job, and compare them against 2 other people, even though they had already done a great job and they'd already proven themselves as an agent. They were still competing for the listing. Imagine that?
That's because the market's changed.
Yeah, the
Absolutely.
market has changed. This is a market where it's wonderful, and I've heard some of you say to the new people that are coming in, this past week I interviewed 4 new people that I brought through the office, and I talked to them about a career in real estate. And some of the advice that the more experienced agents gave these new people was this. Now's a great time to get in the market. There is less competition for agents. There are sellers out there that really have to sell. More importantly, if you learn the skills that you need to learn to make a living in this market, you can make it in any market, right, gang? Because in this market, you need skills, right? If you learn these skills, they will work. Listen, gang, I've trained and coached real estate agents in buyers markets before, brand new to the business, and they just didn't question anything. They put their ego aside, and they went forward, and they just practiced, drilled, and rehearsed the dialogues. And they went out there knocking the cover off the ball. One gentleman, his name was Brad, he was actually Realtor of the Year, got all kinds of designations his first year, and sold, it was like 21 or 22 homes his first year in the business. It was Rookie of the Year for the board of realtors that he belonged to. And just a young guy, he was 21 years old. And but you know what? He just put his blinders on, and he did what we practiced in the training classes. Didn't question anything, didn't vary, didn't get off track, and he knocked the cover off the ball the first year in the business. So it does work. It is very powerful.
I want to ask you if I can.
Sure.
What's the best way to, I don't want to say memorize it. Is it to read it 1, 2, 3 times a day, or memorize it, or like we in the class we talk to each other and practice? What's the best way to memorize those?
The best way to memorize them is, and I think that each person is going to be different. I think each of you, if you had to take an exam, you'd study differently. And one of the things that I've learned in being a speaker and a trainer and a coach and a manager is that different people are will say to you, oh, I hear what you're saying. And if they say that, they're more auditory. They learn by hearing more. Or if someone says, oh, I see what you mean, Mark, that's someone who's much more visual, that they have to see it. You know, some people learn better by doing. So role playing might be a better thing. You have to pick what's best for you. My opinion, do all of the above. If you can say it and hear it and do it at the same time, do all three, then it's more interactive and the odds of you learning it are better. Some actors and actresses, the way that they practice and drill and rehearse their dialogues for movies and plays is that they'll stand in front of a mirror and read the dialogue as quickly as humanly possible. And that's what I'm going to ask you today. I'm not going to ask you to role play and wait for responses and use voice tonality, facial expressions, and all that good stuff. What I want you to do is I just want you to read it as quickly as possible, because the only thing I want to accomplish today is to get this in your brain as much as possible. And I think that ideally will be the best, and it'll save you time. Isn't that a bonus? Right? So you can leave this room and go out and call some expired listings. How's that? You all ready for that? Well, you will be after this seminar. You will be. All right, so let's go through the first one where the agent says, I want to interview a few companies before I list. And what I'd like you to do is read along with me, okay? And here's how it goes. Well, that's no problem, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. As a matter of fact, I love a little competition. Just out of curiosity, who is it exactly that you wanted to talk with? Oh, so in other words, you want to talk to a few agents and go with the one that will do the most for you. Is that correct? And get you the most amount of money for your house. Is that correct? And the seller says?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, let me just ask you this. If I could prove to you beyond a shadow of a doubt that you could talk to 100 other companies and never find one that could do more for you and get you the most amount of money than me and Carlson GMAC, would you list with me right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
You would?
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, then let me just show you something I think will save you time. You see, I took the liberty to do some shopping for you. Now, what I'd like you to all do, what it says in parentheses, is take out your comparison flow chart, and to make it convenient for you, I've made one for you, and it's the next page. So what I'd like you to do is take this out and have it next to the dialogue. So I want you to look at both at the same time. When you're reading it to the other person, not role playing, at that point, I would like you to take out your dialogue. If you're the person that's hearing it and it's being read to you, I want you to remind your partner, hey, pull out the visual, right? Because a picture's worth 1,000 what, gang?
Dollars.
Dollars, you got it. Now, so you take out the comparison flow chart, and it says, you see, here is the company you mentioned, and let's say that they mentioned On Track Realty, okay?
Can we just change these and fill in the blanks?
Absolutely. Go right ahead. I would.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Here are the top companies in our area, and I've added up all the services, things you get for your brokerage fee. If you notice, ours has 31, and the next closest has 26. Do you see that on the bottom, gang?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you notice I put ours in green and theirs in red, because
Right.
green means go and red means stop, right?
Green means money.
Green means money too, absolutely. What I'm trying to say is, in a nutshell, that if my company has 31 things going for them and all the other companies have less, the company you mentioned has 26 going for them, which of the extra 5 things do you think will make a difference in selling your house? And what do you think the seller will have to say when you ask that question?
Oh,
I don't know. You don't know which one of those 5 things will make a difference, right? So why would you take the risk of listing with a company that wasn't doing every single thing they could
But how
to
do you know
get your
what
home
companies do
sold?
what?
Yeah, that's
You
it.
have to, well, here's the thing, now, this comes up every time I show this, and I
Yeah.
show this, I've probably shown you this technique, I don't know, how many times, Mark, maybe
A million
4,
times.
right? And that question always, how do I know? Well, here's the thing what you do, put on your list things that you absolutely know that you do that no one else does. Okay? There are
We
things
don't-
on
we
here
don't
right now
even
that
know
I've
But I
already
don't know
done.
what they don't do.
Yeah, we don't even know that.
I don't think
Yeah,
you
what?
really are really getting this. Let me share this
What
with you,
you
right? Now
do.
follow me on
So we
this,
have to
right?
make our
Talking
own
first.
list.
Let me ask you a question. Go through the list right now.
Yeah.
Let's see, hold on, bear with me one second. How about qualified in-house training? Does every office do what we do every Friday here with someone as qualified as I am to train the agents? Do any of your competitors do that, yes or no?
Well,
I wouldn't, don't think so.
not with you maybe, but we don't know how qualified they are, but Keller Williams, they have courses
I know, but
like
look at
that all the
look at
time.
who's teaching them, and look at the content of the classes, I'm serious.
Yeah,
I mean, so maybe that's 2 companies that do that, but the other 3 don't, you follow me, gang?
yeah.
Alright, so that's one thing. Brochure box on a sign.
I don't have that.
We don't have that.
We don't have that.
We don't, yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question, why don't you?
Cause we
You
don't
got a
wanna pay
personal
for it.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's one thing you could add to your list, because no one else is doing it. You know why they're not doing it? Because they don't wanna pay for it, right?
Yeah.
But see, if you just, the best way to compete, gang, is what? You've heard me say this
Not to
before.
Don't compete.
Don't compete. The best way to compete is don't compete. If everyone's using brochure boxes, don't use brochure boxes. How many of you know who Ozzy Osbourne is?
I went to the
Yeah.
contest.
The concert, yeah?
That was the first thing I ever went to.
Yes?
I was high at the end.
Okay.
High for what?
High for
Of what?
marijuana.
Oh, okay.
Breathe
And
it in.
everybody
Well,
was,
listen, gang, I didn't want to go down that road, but my point was, is that he mentioned to his kids, he said his kids wanted to get a tattoo, and he had his tattoos all over him. He said, if you want to be different, don't get a tattoo. Everyone has a tattoo at your age. All the kids are getting tattoos. You want to be different, don't get a tattoo. The best way to compete is don't compete. Don't do what everyone else is doing. Do things that are different, okay? So that you can have more items to check off here than our competitors do. Now,
What you could do, however, is not even make it a comparison flow chart. Just do what you do enlisted and say, these are the things that we really do well, and these we can really vouch for. Can the other companies really vouch for them? That way, you're not really lying, and the people are looking at you because nobody else has brought in a chart like
Right.
this.
well,
I mean, we can't really say what
Exactly.
those other companies do, we
Yeah.
can't
yes
say.
you can, yes you can. Trust me on this. We need to sit down together so that I can
You can
show
teach
you
us
how
to
to
lie.
do this. This is so, listen, no, it's not like, this is so easy to do, and what's happening is this. You're letting all these things in your mind get in the way of you doing this, because you know what? When you do this, it's very powerful. The second thing is, it's a lot of hard work to do this, and you know what? Very few people will want to do all the work that it is to do this. The last time I brought this up, one of the agents in the class said, hey, can you do this for us?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I don't know what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. Are you willing to buy a brochure box? Are you willing to attend training sessions every Friday and put that on here? See, what are you going to do? There are definitely things that our company does that are very different than other companies. There are some things that we do that are very similar with other companies. But not every company does everything. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay? So what you need to do, what your job is, and I'll help you do this, is to find the things that you do and that we do and put them on the list that other companies don't do. You see, if your number at the bottom isn't bigger than the other numbers, then just make a new list. I don't know how simple I have to make it than that. If your list isn't working, you just need to make a new list.
No, but I think what you're not hearing
Yes?
is the fact that people are not really positive what Caldwell Banker is doing, for instance.
Then only
or
put down
whatever.
things that you're positive that they're doing.
We
Or
could
that
give
they're
it
not
to
doing.
me, we could sit together,
Yes, Judy.
and she knows, let's say, 3 things that Caldwell does that we didn't know, so we'll take it down. And I know something, let's say, that Keller Williams,
I
let's
think
see
I
that.
get sued. if we
Yeah,
say
I
Yeah,
don't
me
think
too.
you wanna go there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Listen,
I had a very interesting phone call this morning, which is why I'm here at 9:30, from a woman whose listing is expired. And she
Yes.
said to me,
yes?
is expiring, what can you do for me? This is what she said, so I thought, well, I better come. But I know, one thing she said I thought was very interesting. She said, I'll tell you what I didn't want to hear, was the agent said to her, well, you have to extend I've spent so much money on my open houses. This hits home with all of us. I have to pay for my advertising, which I was quite surprised. And this woman was very smart. She said, I don't want to hear that stuff. She said,
Absolutely.
those are tax deductions for you. They
Yes.
are not tax deductions
Yeah.
for me. I'm losing, my what I'm spending money on, the monthly cost of carrying this house, is I'm losing money. So I don't wanna hear that. So she said it to me, and I said, well, I'll tell you one thing I can do for you that nobody, I said, you have a
Yes.
wonderful agent, I know she's done a good job, and I know she has, and I truly believe that. But I said, we have different spheres of influence.
Mhm.
And I said, I think I know different groups of people who would be more interested in your property. I didn't say than the other agent. I didn't
Yes.
say anything about the other agent, but I said, I think one thing I would do would be, I'm gonna take my sphere of influence and hand address targeted to that.
Yes.
And I think for this particular, I don't know if I'll get the listing, I don't have a clue. But that's a tough question, because I know it's a very good company, it's a very good agent.
Yes.
And it's a
But-
tough market.
But
Yeah.
what you said was correct, and when you do go to a different company, it does kind of initiate stirrings in that
Yeah.
company, and with different people, it gets stale, unfortunately,
Yes.
things get stale.
She knows this,
And,
I think.
it's just needs new
Yeah.
blood.
New blood.
And I said, I know different people, and I
And
said,
it's
I'm
true,
gonna
you do,
tell-
and
I
those
do.
people know other people, and
Yeah.
so it mushrooms, and different
Yeah.
people hear about it.
So
So,
now what you
I
did was
think-
excellent, and so what I would do is, that is a line item point of differentiation between you and other agents that you can add in, okay?
You could add
I
some
Your
couldn't
marketing
honestly
plan.
think of anything else.
Now, here's the
But
other
I-
part of it. This also is and should be part of what I have often referred to as your 30-day marketing plan, okay? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what I'm gonna do that's different than everyone else is going to do is I'm gonna have a plan of action. There are a list of items that I'm going to implement to get your property sold within the first 30 days that it's on the market. If I don't complete every single one of these items in your 30-day marketing plan within the first 30 days, the reason why I call it a 30-day marketing plan is that you can actually cancel your listing with me and list with another agent, or go for sale by owner, or do anything you want. See, I don't think it's fair that other
I don't like
companies
that.
asked you to sign a 6-month agreement, and if they don't do their job, you can't fire them. I don't think that's fair, do you? I mean, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, could you could you go to work for 6 months and not do your job and still keep it? No? Well, why is it fair that a realtor would do that?
I think
See,
it's
but-
very
Yes.
different though if you're dealing with a new listing or an expired listing. That's two different
I-
sets of
Well,
things.
I agree, and you would handle it differently, but the 30-day marketing plan works for either one. In other words, what you're doing by offering that to them is I often say this to them as well. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you ever heard the old saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I have a plan of action. See, that alone could make a huge difference between you and the other agent. The other agent probably didn't come in with a written plan that they handed the seller and say, here are a list of items that I'm going to do to get your property sold for you. Okay?
And that's one thing they really ask you. When I went in for a listing, a woman said, can you tell me exactly what you're going to do to market this?
Absolutely.
And they
Right.
wanna know exactly and have it down. So
Right.
frankly, if you had it written down, like I spoke it, I mean, that listing I
Yes.
happen to have gotten, thank God, but that was a while ago. But, you know, I spoke it, but now I'm thinking about it, I probably should have had it written down.
Absolutely.
So then I would have pointed to each one and said, these are the different things that I'm going to do.
In case she was a
And-
visual
Well,
person.
Exactly.
we have that
And
sheet.
everything that
Right,
you
yeah.
have, in addition to that, you would have a visual for
Exactly.
everyone. So if you say you're gonna use a lockbox for ease of showings, show them the
Right.
lockbox. Here's what you should bring with you on the listing appointment, what?
Everything.
Everything. Everything with you, so they see, if you're gonna
Absolutely.
use a brochure box, bring the brochure box and put it on their kitchen table and show the brochures of their property in the brochure box. You follow me?
Cause then they
Okay.
kinda know you're walking the walk and not just talking the talk.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So again, you have to pick out things, let's say, National Relocation Division. Now, we know that we have one, and we know the blue company has one, but the red one doesn't, and the other blue company doesn't have one. All right, so these are things that you know about other companies. What if you say we have multiple offices, right, in the location area? There are 3 companies in this area that have multiple offices, and the rest of them do not, right? You could add that onto your list.
And we
Again,
don't
all
care
you
about
need
the
is
rest of
more than one, okay?
It's always those 3 that we compete with.
That's right, that's right. But I'm gonna show you some more things about competing with those 3 people. Now, going through, You could put in there non-competing sales manager. And again, you would know better than I do, because you know the players out there in the marketplace. How many of the managers in the other company or owners in the other company actually list and sell real estate, either part-time or full-time?
Not too
And if you don't know, just go in the multiple listing service and look, and see if they have any listings or sales.
No, no.
Okay? Effective home warranty program, open 7 days. If you wanna know if your competitors are open 7 days, call them on the weekend and see if anyone answers the phone. Or call them up and say, yes, what are your hours, when are you open? Okay?
I wouldn't wanna.
Seller's
wanna
description
call
of
our-
property,
No,
there
I
are,
wouldn't
I wouldn't
either.
wanna call our office.
hold on, gang, listen. What if there are some companies that absolutely do not and will not use a seller's description of property, right? You know, because you've co-broked with some of those companies, say, oh, we don't use those,
Oh, yeah.
right? And does that help the seller, does that help defend the seller in a situation when they're in a jam? Absolutely, to help protect their best interest. What about a saleability checklist? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the other companies, I happen to know, do not use a saleability checklist. In fact, if you ask them what it is, they probably won't know, right?
What isn't?
What is
Ah,
it?
see, there you go, right? And I could say, look, if you don't believe me, call your other agents and ask them. See, what if I'm just naming things off the top of my head right now without doing any research that's going to give me maybe 1 or 2 or 3 more checks on these boxes that my competitors are having, right? And that's all I need. I only need a few more than my competitor to beat them. You follow me, gang? So a saleability checklist is a list of items that you, the seller, have control over that you can do to help the saleability of your property. There are 17 items on this list. If I can't check off 13 or 14 of these items, then I cannot be held personally responsible for whether your home will sell or not. Let's go through that list together, and then you pull out the saleability checklist and pick out all the items that will help get the property sold or not get it sold. And that's a different class. I can share that with you. If you want to know what it is and you want to have that saleability checklist, just simply email me at jmiller@carlsonre.com, and I will forward an email back to you and give you the saleability checklist and show you what it is and how it is, right? Andrew, you have it, right? Yeah, he gave it to you.
Hey, John.
Yes.
One question, could you have a time when we could organize a notebook?
Sure, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, I'd be happy to do that for you, yes. Marketing, what if you did this? What if you offered a 30-day marketing guarantee? I happen to know for a fact that your competitors are not doing that, gang. You know, no one in your office is even doing that, but if you offered it, giving them the 30-day guarantee that if I don't do my job, I don't get these items implemented within the first 30 days, you can fire me. Sign this, send it into my office, and we'll cancel the listing. Now, why is it that your competitors aren't doing this? Because they're what?
Yeah.
They're scared.
They're afraid, right?
Like we are, I
Yeah.
took it off the listing right away.
What is it that scares you about it? And by the way, if you,
I'm scared that they would, you say, and if you don't like whatever it is.
I
at
didn't
the
say
end-
that though. I said if I don't complete every one of these
He's
action
not
items.
saying to sell the house, he's just saying
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
go through it.
And here's what it does. It makes me have to work hard, right? And that's what the seller wants. The seller wants to know that I mean what I say and I say what I mean. You see, it holds me accountable. I know that as an agent, if I don't implement all these items, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that I'm gonna lose my job, and I don't wanna do that. So that's your reassurance of knowing that I'm gonna get the job done. And you know what, gang? That, in and of itself, got me listings over competitors who had 20 years more experience than I did, sold more homes than I did, sold homes in the area that I did, and were related to the seller because I was willing to do that, and the other people just took it for granted. You follow me, gang?
Mhm.
That's why I was using the techniques that I'm gonna share with you today. I was able to get 7% commission in a very tough buyer's market. 7% when everyone else was groveling for 4, 5, and maybe 6 if you were lucky, okay? Gang, this stuff works, it's powerful. Open your mind, okay? Have an open mind and be receptive to new things, and good things will happen, I guarantee you that. Here's another thing that I invested in myself personally when I was an agent. I bought the 1-800 toll-free call, and when I advertised my listings, what I would do is I advertised myself, and you can do this on the internet, you can do it on a print advertising, and on the top of the page I put pressure-free, pre-recorded info. Pressure-free, pre-recorded info, and all my listings had a 1-800 number and a code you'd enter in to get free information. You could hit pound, and then you could receive a fax with a listing sheet on it. It was unbelievable, and people who were interested would leave their name and number. I didn't have to take phone calls from people saying, hey, what's the address, or how many bedrooms does that have? They would call, they'd get all the information on the and if they were interested, they'd leave their name and number. It was awesome. I didn't have to flush out phone calls. The people were this much more qualified when I knew that they were willing to leave a name and a number. I knew that they were serious or interested. There were a lot of people called and hung up. There were probably some of my competitors just checking out what I was doing, right?
But can't they get the same thing, just
They
going through
can,
the
Mark, but you know
internet?
what's crazy is they're not doing it. I did this, none of my competitors were doing it. I put brochure boxes on my signs, none of my competitors did it. It was the weirdest thing. I expected them to do that, but I was able to keep it on my list that my competitors weren't doing it. And how do I know one of my competitors today didn't just pick up a brochure box and put it on one of their listings, but are they doing it on all their listings? That's different too. See, it's not good enough that I do these things on one listing, it's important that I do these things on all of my listings, because the buyer for your property may come, there's a greater chance that your buyer is gonna come from another property and I bring them here, the lead is gonna come from another property and bring them here, than it is that I'm actually going to get the buyer directly from advertising and marketing your house and advertising your property. On my brochure boxes, if I had 20 to 30 listings, on the back of the brochure of the property that would give the information, I had a list of all the addresses of all my other listings. So that people could pick up and drive and go to my other listings and pick up brochures on those as well. So I said, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you see, I'm not just marketing and advertising your home on your property, on your sign, in your brochure box, but I'm also marketing and advertising your home on all my other listings too. Are my competitors doing that? No. So you see, gang, there are some things that you can put together on it. Okay.
So you could do this flow chart with another section of your personal attributes.
I would pepper it in there. I would mix it in though. You know what I mean?
And then
I would-
you can't tell, I mean, if I said, for instance, that I have over 30 years' experience,
Yes.
I don't know what other, how, you can't write
Well,
compared to somebody else.
let's say you have 30 years experience, and here's what you do. Go reverse on it, okay? Put an X on all of your competitors and then say this to them, Roberta. Use the assumptive close on and say, listen, I put an X there anyway just to give them a benefit of the doubt. I'm sure that when you called these companies, you asked for someone who had a minimum of 30 years experience, did you? And they're gonna say no, or I don't know, and then Roberta's gonna say, oh, so I guess I have to remove those X's then, huh? Well, more for me.
Very good.
You see where you can go with this,
Well,
gang,
you know
right?
something, these slippery sellers tell you everything. I told
Yeah.
a seller that, I had 30 years' experience. He said, I might wanna have some new young blood.
Right. And then, but then
It doesn't
Roberta,
matter, I know, they're
then
crazy.
Roberta, you could use the same dialogue that I taught all the new people, and Roberta can say, well, you see, Mr. and Ms. Seller, there's no such thing as experienced versus new agents. The only thing different between agents is active versus inactive agents. I'm an active agent, and let me show you why. Let me show you all the certificates of all the classes I've attended recently that new people don't attend, right? Let me show you my 30-day exclusive marketing plan and show you just how active I am in getting your property sold. See, it's a good benefit to you that I have the experience, but it's even bigger benefit that I'm actively marketing your property and that I have a sphere of influence and a
Don't
past
go against
clientele.
Sally Mitchell.
Yeah.
She's been in longer than you have.
But she may not be an active
Oh,
agent.
she's
Oh,
very
Okay,
active.
good.
Yeah.
But she may not have a 30-day marketing plan guarantee. She may not be using brochure boxes.
No, she's not.
And Mr. and Mrs. Sell, let me ask you a question. If she's not using those items and your home was meant to sell as a result of using one of those items, your home may not sell unless you list with me. So why wouldn't an agent, I don't understand, Mr. Massell, why would an agent do everything they possibly could to get your home sold? I never understood that. That's why I'm doing everything any agent could possibly do to get a home sold, isn't that make Could that make all the difference in the world to you, yes or no? You see, gang, when I first started talking about this, more than half of you were like this, no, you were yelling at me, like telling me, no, that won't work. Now you're all nodding. You know, I got you, okay? So thank you for keeping an open mind, all right? But listen, gang, no seller out there is as tough as you are in this classroom. I can assure you right now. All the objections that I get when I do a training class, they never come up when I was out there listening. And listen, gang, I've been on hundreds, literally hundreds of listing appointments, and no one seller is ever as tough as you are on yourself. You know, the things we worry about most never what?
Never happen.
They never happen, right? So just know that, just know that. So that's the comparison flow chart. Now, here's an analogy. Look at the last paragraph. With us, you get more for your money. If you could fly across, if you had to fly across America and you had a choice to either fly first class or coach, be honest, which one would you choose?
First class.
I would say first class, right. Why? Because you'd get more for your money, correct? And it'd be an easier journey, right? Same thing with me. You list with me, you get more for your money, and it's an easier journey. When choosing a company, if you can get first class or less for the same amount of money, wait a minute, when choosing a company, if you can get first class or less for the same amount of money, it would be silly to go for less, right? Absolutely. Great. All you need to do now is simply approve this listing form, and I'll get the sign in the yard in a couple of days. And that's when you hand them the pen, you direct their signature, and then you start what?
Wrapping it up.
You start packing up as if everything was normal.
Right.
And you don't make a big deal out of it. You have effectively handled the objection. There's nothing they can say about this. No one else, none of your competitors are doing this. Listen, I've told you, probably, if you've been to every one of these training classes, I've already told you 4 or 5 times to do it, and you still haven't done it yet. So when you do, you will have no competition. I love saying that because it's so true. You have no competition, right, gang? So let's stay with the comparison flow chart right now. And if you would, turn to the person next to you and read it as quickly as possible. Again, don't role play, just read it as fast as you can. And if you're watching this DVD alone, read it to yourself out loud as fast as you can. If you're watching it with other people, turn to the person next to you and read it as fast as you can. Do we all have partners?
Yes. What are we reading, this paragraph? This comparison.
Louise, I'll be your partner, okay? You ready? Okay, ready? Go.
Well, that's
Well,
no
that's no
problem.
problem.
It's just a
It's a matter of fact, I love it.
Well, that's
Just gotta do it.
Curiosity.
Exactly, that's what I wanted to talk about.
In other words,
Hey, read it faster.
Is that correct? Then you can close the one for your home. Is that correct?
Don't forget to show the flow chart too. Keep
Here's an analogy. Well, that is
Okay, now switch partners, the other person, read it. Now it's your turn to relax and listen, and here's what I want you to do. If they don't, listen, if they don't pull out the comparison flow chart, please remind them. In fact, I put in parentheses to remind you to take out the comparison flow chart. You need to practice using the visual. Okay, you ready, set, go. Well, that's no problem, Mr. Summers. No, but this is just out of curiosity, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So one of the reasons why I talked about it is to go with one, it's okay, along those lines, is that correct?
Well, that's the problem.
And get you the most amount of money. Is that correct? Okay, well, that's how it works. I could say to the shadow of a doubt that you could talk to 100 other companies and never find one that would do more for you, they give you the most money. Would you list with the average? Let me show you something that I'll do.
I go with
I
you.
took
You
a
talk to a hundred other
look.
companies, that come on,
You see, here is the company that you have. Here's the other company. And all of it. If you notice, ours says 31, the next one says 26. What I'm trying to say is that if my company has 31 things going here, and all the other companies have 26 going on, which of the extra 5 things might have differences? So here's an analogy. You can get the flag across America.
all the services,
David Foster showed these things, which would have.
you know, if I said,
Why
going
did
to
you
the
get
next
that?
post,
This is a journey, right? Once you visit a company, if you could get
going
for
up
first class,
that
or
my
class,
company is
all my money,
doing
like you say, to
things
go
to
for
that,
life.
but all the other
All you need to do now is
companies
simply approve the
These are
form,
analogies.
and I will get this signed. Here's the pen, with the signature, and I'm packing up.
of the extra five things.
Which one would you buy? Why?
With,
Because you
I should get
more
extra
for your
money,
money.
if you have five customers, you have a choice to buy first class or coach.
When choosing company, you
It's
can
more.
get first class or less, or the same
Why?
amount of
Because you
money.
can get more for money,
Easy
so
or less, right?
it's an easy
Right, all you
journey,
need to do is
right?
simply
I'm
approve
choosing
the
company,
listing form, and
first
I'll
class
get
or less.
the sign.
Okay, let's
So
wrap it
send
up.
them up and
Okay.
you can show them
Thank you very much.
Oh, my Lord.
I know,
Pen.
it's hard to just.
Okay, gang, give your partner a hand, will ya? Yay! Seriously, you guys did awesome with that. Thank you so much for your enthusiasm and doing such a great job. Now, I'm gonna keep the momentum going and I'm gonna jump to the next one. And this one I'm genuinely excited about, and here we go. This applies to one of two things that they can say to you. You can use this technique. In other words, if the seller says to you, well, the other agent said they could get me more money, we can use this objection handling technique. Or if the other agent said, we take less commission. So this works for either or, okay?
What page you on?
I'm on the next page.
Expired.
I got
I'm
the
joking.
expired, you really are
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
I'm talking
expired,
about
okay.
it says expired list, for those of you watching too, it says the expired list, that's the page right there. Okay, now, we've talked about this before, and you know basic human psychology is if you want someone to do something, tell them what they're gonna lose if they don't do it. Or tell them, you know, the fear of loss is a greater motivator than the opportunity to gain something, okay? Here's the bottom line, gang, a seller won't do nearly as much to get on the sold list than they will to not be on the expired list, okay? The fear of loss is a greater motivator than the reward of gain. So one of the best tools that you could use for many different objection handling techniques is to have the expired list. I think it was Andres, you had the expired list and you had them all the pages taped together end to end. So you pull them up and you lift them up like this and they're laying right out on the floor as a huge list of expired listings, right? And they say, listen, Mr. Masello, this is not where you want to be. You don't want to have your contract expire. Here's what I want you to do. I'm going to read the dialogue real fast out loud. All I want you to do is read along with me, okay? And then I'm going to show you something after I read it. Let me ask you this. Did the other agent say she could get you more money, or did she show you she could get you more money? Let me ask you this. If you knew she couldn't sell your house, would you list with her? Now, that's good if they say, if you could get me more money. What I would do to transition if they said this to me, if they said, well, the other agent said that they would do it for less, and I would say, oh, I can certainly appreciate that, but let me ask you a question. When they said they were going to do it for less, I'm assuming that you're going to get more money in your pocket, am I right? And having more money in your pocket would make a difference, wouldn't it? Right? So let me ask you this, did the other agent say she could get you more money, or did she show you she could get you more money? See how I transitioned into that, from handling one dialogue to another? Let me ask you this, if you knew she couldn't sell your house, would you list with her? Of course, you know, and you go like this, no, I wouldn't list with anybody if I knew they couldn't sell my house. Well, let me show you something that I think will save you a lot of heartache. I took the liberty of pulling up that company's expired list, and then I'm gonna show them the expired list. I can understand how more money can be very tempting, but here's a list of people that generally have two things in common. Number one, they listed with that other company, and number two, they couldn't sell their home. Now let me ask you this, is it worth the risk for a little bit of extra money? Really what I'm asking you is, do you want to list your house or do you want to actually sell your home? And I put the little smiley face in there because I want you to say it with a smile, gang, okay? Great, all you need to do now is simply approve this form and I'll get the sign in the yard in a few days. But here's the powerful part. Go to the next page in the visual, and this is what I spent last night. I spent hours putting this together. And so what I did, and for those of you who are looking at these notes, this applies to the local area of where I am right now, but those of you watching this video are listing and selling homes in different areas. So what I did is I went to the multiple listing service and I pulled up all the multiple office companies. I took each office that they have and I listed how many agents they have, and then I listed how many expired listings they had, looking through the MLS individually, each office, over the last 12 months, how many expired listings those multiple office companies had, and then I added them all up. And here's what I came up with. See gang, this is all the work I did last night, okay? I spent time, I probably spent 45 minutes to an hour gathering up data, okay, to come up with this. But look at this, it's worth it. You could literally leave this class today, throw this on the table of a seller and say, bam, which company would you rather list with? Now let me go over the details with you. Now, look at this page right here that says listing versus selling. I would recommend, you can literally take this and put it into a clear plastic sheet and add it to your listing presentation today, okay? And now, because here's the thing right now, let me ask you this. What are you showing them right now that proves to them that you're gonna get their home sold versus the other company?
Yeah.
See, what do you have right now that you're using that's proof, positive, that it's less risk?
Statistics.
Yeah, there's less risk for you by listing with you to get their home sold than with your competitors. Now watch this.
Can I ask you just one?
Yes.
Did you check to see if any of those expired listings were reactivated or?
No, I did not. But I didn't do it with ours either, Roberta. I made it fair. In other
Okay.
words, I did the same for everyone. But I know where you're going with that, yes.
Yeah, that they could have been reactivated.
Yeah, and by the way, sellers don't even know what you're talking about.
That's
If you
right.
say-
And you're not
answer
gonna
that
go on
question.
and check it.
Right, they don't understand relist, you know, and all this other stuff.
I just
Louise,
don't want to
I was
be doing some research.
you're not gonna get sued.
Don't leave them with
My
anything.
God, help me.
I was
See,
doing some research
don't-
myself in
Yeah.
just the town of Wilbraham actually, and I pulled up all the expired, and I double checked to make sure they hadn't been reactivated or sold, and only one of them was a Carson listing out of 35 canceled or expired. Only one of them.
So that's a statistic that you could use.
It's
And you know
constant.
what,
I was
print it right
surprised.
out and show them. And this is powerful stuff. Now, watch this. This information, I pulled it out of the multiple listing service. If you're worried about getting, come on, I'm the one who did this. You could say, well, John gave it to me, right?
Sue John.
You know what, guys? The things you're worrying about never happen, gang. They never happen. All right, now follow along if you would, please. Listen. Number of listing contracts that have expired in the last 12 months from the top 3 multi-office companies in Western Massachusetts. Okay? And so I took the top 3, and we have CB over the last 12 months. They had this is how I would say, they had 562 expired listings in the Hampden County area, okay? And I took the number of agents they had and I divided it by 562. That equals 2.7 expired listings per agent in their company. Just to make it even, because a really sharp seller may say to you, well, maybe they have more expireds because they have more listings and more agents.
Yeah, that's
And I
what
say,
they're gonna say.
but listen, and I would say, yes, they do, but they have, so what I did to make it fair, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is I figured it out, 2.7 per agent. Keller Williams, exactly the same thing, 2.7 per agent. They had 441 expired listings, And if you look at us in green down here, Carlson with GMBC, we only had 265 expired listings in the last 12 months. And our number is much less at 2.1 expired listings per agent. So, and then I put a little asterisk up there next to the, to remind you of what to say. And it says, next to the competitor's expired listing number, it says these sellers have two things in common. One, they listed with another company, and two, they could not sell their home. Now, here's the close. I even wrote the close down for you so you wouldn't forget to cap it off with this. Which company offers the least risk of not getting your home sold? And what is the answer when you look at these stats, gang? Let me hear it.
Carlson.
Are you guys with me?
GMAT, yeah.
All right. And then I love what I wrote on the bottom.
Yeah, I read that, that was cool.
It says,
Theirs is really bad.
yeah, it says, now some of you might be going up against this company, right?
I go up against that
Right?
company all the time.
And it says in Western Mass area, they're not a multi-office company. They have multiple offices, but they don't have multiple offices in Western Mass, okay? However, you should note that they have 3.1 expired listing contracts per agent. So they're have listings expired like off the chart more than anybody.
And they have so much listings, so.
But they,
Yeah, but they don't sell, so what's the
I
difference?
know,
But
but
per
the people
agent.
just see other names.
per agent, gang, follow that. See, you can't give me an objection I've already handled. See, the best presentation is one that handles the objection before it comes up. I knew what you were gonna say, that's why I did the per agent. Right, gang?
What Marta is referring to, however, is that
Yes.
if people drive around, they're going to see signs up that says the name of that company versus signs that say ours.
Yeah.
So granted, they're not getting them sold, but they're getting the exposure from having the listings. I think that's what she's referring to.
But if you get in on the appointment, that's how you can beat that objection.
Right.
Again,
Right,
what are you using now to compete with them? What visual, what statistics are you using to prove to them that your company's better than theirs? What are you using? And if you don't have anything, I just gave you something, okay, gang? Huge value here, huge value.
Well, one of the things that I find a problem is, for instance, I got a phone call this morning from a gal, and it's gonna be expiring with some other agent. But she's got a price much too high, it's never gonna sell, right?
Sure.
But she wants me to pick it up, at that same price, and I'm trying to be honest with her, and I'm looking at the assessed value and everything else, and saying, there's just, you're not gonna get that for it, and da-da-da-da-da. So what do you do about something like that?
It goes back to, why are you selling? Do you absolutely need to sell? If you have to sell, then you need to price it right. Well, I don't wanna price it right. Well, then you can't sell your home. But I have to sell my home, then you need to price it right. Well, I don't wanna price it right, I want more money. Well, you can't have more money, then don't sell your house. It's
That's
just
what,
back
that's
and
just
forth
what I did, I went back and forth.
that's the bottom line.
Because she has 2 mortgages on it, so she
Right.
needs to get so much in order to get so much out.
Talk about a short sale then.
I did, I
Okay,
mentioned that too
great.
this morning. And then
Get
she
it?
said, but that won't leave me with anything that I can go buy something, so I said,
Right.
I understand
Then stay-
where you're coming from, I said,
Then
but
stay
I
living
said,
where
you
you are.
can always go rent something with the money that you're making.
Sure. Until you save it up. And listen, if the pain of doing that is greater than staying where you are, then stay where you are. Here's what I used to say to sellers all the time. My job is not to come here and list your house. My job is here to come here and provide you with facts and information to help you make a decision on whether you should sell or not. If it makes sense for you to sell your home based on the price I've given you, then I can tell you all the wonderful reasons why you should list with me and my company. But first, let's get this out of the way. Does it make sense to even sell your property? Let's talk about you first. Let's talk about your motivation. Let's talk about your financial situation. And that worked, that was powerful, because it wasn't about me selling them on anything. It was me what I was doing really is I was pre-qualifying them to see if this lead was really a prospect, to see if this seller was really a seller or not. And I would try to do, if I were you, I'd try to do as much of that over the phone as you possibly can, because you might be able to save yourself some time. Okay, gang? They may not be a real seller.
Right.
Okay, and you're gonna run up against that. You see, there are 2 things. There are conditions, things that you can't control, and there are objections, things that you can't overcome. And listen, gang, there isn't one thing that one of your competitors can say about you or your company or the listing or anything else that can't be overcome. The only thing stopping you from overcoming it is knowing the words, knowing the dialogue, and knowing which tool to pull out and use when. my son plays video games, and I see him playing, and sometimes, if he's playing one of those fighting video games, he pulls out different weapons. And, he says, well, if you have all these beetles coming out of the wall, you need to use the shotgun. And then he said, but if you have the bad guys coming up from behind the rocks, that's the time when you have to use the machine gun. And when you're up in close battle, you have to use the knife, when you're up close to, because if you don't use those weapons at the specific time, you'll lose your ammunition in your life and you'll lose the game. Gang, it's a game. You have to know which weapon to pull out at what time and when to use it, and when you do, you can win the game. Okay, gang? Here's what's beautiful right now. Your competitors are probably not in a training class right now hearing the same information and using this stuff. They're probably commiserating about how bad the market is. They're probably reading the newspaper or watching the news and getting depressed. They're probably, talking to other agents in the market, getting them as equally depressed as they are. And you're here refueling, re-energizing, sharpening your axe, and knowing what to use, when, how, why, and where. So let's go to the expired list, and let's read this to your partner real quick. So let's get started. You ready? It starts with, let me ask you this. Okay, Louise, ready? Go.
Let me ask you this.
Try to read as fast as you can.
I can understand how this can be very tempting. One is they listen to the other companies and choose it to sell. Now let me ask you this, if there is a little bit extra money, really what I'm asking, great, all you need to do now is simply go on this now, and I will get signed up in a few days.
Okay, so you should switch now, ready, take a break, and the next person reads. Okay, you ready? Let me ask you this. Did the other agent say to give you more money, or did she show you? Let me ask you this. If you knew I could sell it to someone else, let me show you something that I'm sure will save you a lot of mistakes. I took the liberty of pulling up the company's expired list.
Save you a lot of money. I took the liberty of pulling up the company's expired list.
I can understand how more money can be very tempting. Here is a list of
One is
generally
very
accepted companies. One is they listed with the other company, two is that they couldn't sell. Now let me ask you this, is it worth the risk for a little bit of extra money? Really, what I'm asking you is, do you want to list your house or do you want to sell your house? Great, all you need to do now is simply approve this listing form and I'll get the sign in the yard. I hand you the pen, right, I'll show you where to sign, and then I start packing up. Okay, gang?
You don't wanna sign?
Very good.
Okay, we're on a roll.
You're a tough one.
Not today.
We're on a roll. Some people say we're on a Kaiser bun. Okay, but oh, boom. Seller says the other agent said she can get me more money, or the seller says the other agent will do it for less money, right? And either, it was the same thing with the last one, right? So what I'm doing is I'm giving you multiple techniques. I'm giving you 3 techniques, 3 tools that you can use today to handle these objections of competing with the other broker. Because it's usually one of those things, one of those areas that where they beat you on it, right? It's usually on price. Either they're listing
Always
it for
on
more,
price.
their commission is less, because the perception is they've effectively handled it with the seller that they're gonna net more money in their pocket by using that agent than using you. So now you have to change, there's nothing a competitor can say that you can't change their mind if you know what to say and what to do. Now, here's what you use is the ratio clause. Now, feel this, okay? I did some more additional statistics, and I spent time on trend graphics. I looked up all kinds of ways to make this powerful tool work, and I finally found a way to do it. If you're a real estate agent, now the technique works like this. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you notice, the average listing agent in the marketplace lists their home for 94%, sells their home for 94% of the asking price. I list and sell my listings at 98% of the asking price. Therefore, you're actually netting 4% more in your pocket on average, because I get that much more for my listings than the average agent in the multiple listing service. So you see, by paying me 2% more, you're actually netting another 2% more in your pocket. What matters and what makes the difference more than anything is what you net in your pocket, not what you pay for a brokerage fee. You see, because with all my services and everything I do and my negotiating skills, by offering more to the co-broke and all those other reasons, I'm able to net more money on my listings than another agent is, okay? Now, what I do is I show them the multiple listing statistics and I prove that to them. Here was the problem, okay, gang? The problem is that you may not be able to say that.
Right, because you might have too many listings.
Well, because you might have, because
maybe you didn't get that.
listen, your list to sell ratio might be the same as the, than what the average real estate agent. Some of you in this room have a lower than average list to sell ratio and you can't use this. So, here's what I did. You know, I think Elliot Ness said, when someone pulls a knife, you pull a gun, okay? So here's what I did, is I put some statistics together for you, okay? And I put a dialogue together for you that is something you can use, okay? It's something you can say. It's something that is factual, statistically, it's solid, it's very well founded, and it works, okay? Because let me ask you a question, what are you using now? Like if you look at this and you say, I don't like it, well, what are you using now that you like, right? What are you using now that works, okay, gang? Here's the thing, sometimes if people don't even know what the heck you just said, as long as you said something, they'll list with you because they think that you said something that handled the objection that sounded important, so they list with you. I've heard agents say things on listing appointments that I didn't even understand what they said, and they just looked at the seller and said, do you agree? And the seller went, and they said, all you need to do is sign in, like, okay. And they don't even know what the agent said. I got in the car with the agent and said, what did you say? She's like, oh my God, I don't know, I was so nervous, I just said something. And I said, you know, I learned something in that. Sometimes all you have to do is say something. You know, it's when you get beat up the most is when you don't know what to say. You don't know how to handle it, you know? Some of you say, some of the way that you think you need to compete is you compete. So the worst thing you could do is compete by doing the same thing. So if they say, well, I'll do it for, I'll do it for 6%. Let's say your fee for service is 7, and someone else says, well, I'm gonna do it for 6, I'll save you 1%. And then you come back and say, well, I'll do it for 5, I'll save you even 2%. And they come back and say, well, I'll do it for 4. You know, that's not the way to handle it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. So here's the scoop. What I did is I put this statistical information together to give you something to say. Now, if you're watching this video and you're not an agent in the Hampden County market area, then you need to get your own statistics together, but I've given you a great idea as to how to do that. So in other words, you're going to present a visual to the seller, and you could even use the same statistics that I did. I went into our trend graphics, and I printed out all the agents in our company, and I picked out all the agents that had an above average list to sale ratio, okay? Now let me read the dialogue to you. If you knew that by paying me 6% you could put more cash in your pocket than you could by paying the other company 5%, would you pay us, you'd pay us 6%, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Well, let me just show you something that I think will put your mind at ease. Here's what we call our list to sell ratio, and at that point you pull out the list to sell ratio, and the dialogue goes on like this. In our multiple listing service, we track what houses are listed for and what they actually sell for. The average in our area is 96.3%, so I checked that out. In Hampden County, the average list to sell ratio in the multiple listing service right now is 96.3%. My company's top negotiators list to sell ratio is 98.7%, and they of course are going to help me get your home sold. Literally what we are asking, what we are saying to you is that by paying us just 1% more, we are getting 2.4% more. Can you see where that will get you a higher net? And what are they going to say? Yes, and you're going to point to this sheet, and then you say, great, all you need to do now is simply approve this form, and I'll get the sign in the yard in a couple of days. Now, if by some bizarre act of God they come in and they say, well, listen, you know what, explain this to me a little more, I've set this form up so that they can explain it. You could literally mail this to a seller and they would understand what it is based on the outline. So let me quickly go through it with you. I know I'm preaching to the choir here and you all get it, but let me go through it real quick anyway. I obtained this information from the multiple listing service last night, which was, and I put the date there, percentage based on the average asking price versus the actual sold price. And I put two examples down there for the seller so that they get what it is, because I know you get it because you deal with this every day, gang, but they don't always get it, they don't always understand. So the example is if you listed a $100,000 property and it's sold at 98.7%, the property ratio is, the property would sell for $98,700. Let me ask all of you a question just to get your temperature. If I listed a property for $100,000 and my list to sell ratio was 95%, what would the property sell for? $95,000, you got it. Now, if you take like the average sale price in Longmeadow, for instance, and have them deal with a number that they can deal with, you know, it's that they would understand. Let's say alternatively a property listed for $400,000, it would sold for $394,800. It also had sold at a 98.7% list to sale ratio. Now, what I did is I took here and I took the Carlson GMAC top 6. I called them the top 6 negotiators, best negotiators. I should probably add that in there. Carlson GMAC. No, top 6 negotiators.
Then why
that
wouldn't they
works.
ask for one of those people?
That's right.
Well, listen, that's your fear, by the way. You're there at the table, but remember what I said in the dialogue again. I already handled that objection because I knew you were going to think that or say that today. So what I said was, of course, these people are going to help me get your home sold. When you list with me, you list with them. We all work together as a company to get your property sold. Okay? So I guarantee you they're not going to say, well, I don't want you, I want one of them. And I would say, what's the point? We're all going to work together to get your property sold. You had me out here for a reason. I'm here, I'm going to implement it, and I'm going to implement my marketing plan. And I'm going to use these people to help me get your property sold. You follow me, gang?
Yeah.
That's if they say that, that's something you can say back to them. Again, you have to have something to say, and that's something you can say back. I promise you they'll never say that to you. You gotta at some point, gang, you gotta kind of like believe in it, because, and I'm gonna go back to this, what are you using now? Right? So what are you saying now to overcome this objection, right? So what I did is I literally took their list to sell ratio and I added it all up and divided by 6 and I came up with 98.7. I put the number right over to the right side. And I took the average Hampden County agent at 96.3%. If you deduct 93.6, what is 96.3 minus 98.7? What does that leave you with? 2.4%. Now the difference in my fee and their fee is how much?
1%.
What if it were 2?
Could be.
They would net almost a 0.5% more with me than they would with the other agent. So if they were at 5 and I was at 7, I'd still beat the competitor, right? So the fee difference is 1%. The difference between 1% and 2.4% is how much? 1.4%. That's the additional net in your pocket after paying a higher fee. And then I gave 2 examples for 2 different price ranges to give you a ballpark idea of how much money that Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that's going to net you in your pocket. Let me ask you a question. Roberta, you're selling your house for $400,000. Could you use an extra $5,600 this year? What would you do with that money? I'm going to Aruba. I'm going to St. Thomas. I'm going to go on vacation with that, right? I'm going to keep it and not tell my kids I have it, right? That's what I'm going to do, right? So therefore, and then I you like that one, huh, Andre? Here's what I did. I even made it easier for you, and I added the close at the bottom, so all you have to do is read it or let them read it for themselves and say, therefore, it is more important what you net in your pocket than the fee you pay for service. Seldom is a lower fee, gang, synonymous with greater value. Ooh, choice words, right?
Yeah, you get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for, absolutely. And you know what's interesting? That's what a seller will say to you when you read that to them. we kinda role play right now.
Right.
And just what Judy said, that's what the seller will say to you, they're gonna say, yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? Now, you can also use the, and Audrey, you know this one, I'm thinking of the Yugo clothes, you know? And no offense to the car manufacturer, but they make the most inexpensive car out there on the market. And, you know, when I pulled into your driveway, Louise, I noticed that you owned, what?
Camry,
A Camry, a Toyota Camry. Why didn't you buy a Yugo?
because of the quality in the Toyota Camry,
You get better value, in other words, right?
lasts longer.
In the long run, you net more money in your pocket owning a
Oh, yeah.
Camry than you would a Yugo, and that's why you bought it. Doesn't it make sense to do that when hiring an agent as well?
Yeah.
You paid a little more for
I'm
them,
the Toyota
right?
of the real estate
but
world.
in the long run, you made more. Does that make sense, Louise?
Yeah.
Yeah, any questions?
No.
Right, all you
Sign
need
me
to
up.
do is just, all you need to do is just approve this form, I'll get the sign the Yugo.
Just to
And then I start
clarify,
packing up, yes.
Yugo is not a Polish car.
It's not, okay. Okay, good, thank you for that.
That's for Yugoslavia, former
All right.
Yugoslavia.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
that, John,
so, yes,
that, P.S. Pat Smith.
what's that?
She, Pat Smith?
Where? Oh, and
Century
there.
21.
Yeah,
Oh,
is
okay.
she from our company now?
Yes.
She was.
No,
Not now.
Century
she's not?
21.
Oh, I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
looked in the
But it's,
MLS.
we're talking about the last 12 months, so it may.
Well, you don't wanna put a name down,
Yeah,
it's
if
not
they're,
our company.
if they're not
Right.
still with us, then,
Okay.
I thought, okay, I didn't
And
know
since
that.
we're picking this apart, Thomas Bretta it's
It's-
Thomas Bretta,
I
not
know, I
Bretta Thomas.
reversed it,
Yeah.
I'll fix that too, gang.
Okay.
Oh, so
I'll fix
Pat
that.
Smith left us, huh?
Yeah,
First of the year, I think, right, when
Yeah.
everybody came over?
But again, it's not gonna make our numbers all wacky, and,
No.
But we
no,
still
but
got
it's
good ones
better
on
to
there.
have, all cows and people.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that what it was?
absolutely, well, you should have all cows, and so, you know what, gang?
Okay.
You might, after I give this to you today, and I'll revise it and email it to you and all that good stuff,
Okay.
and change the numbers and all that, but you're gonna have to do that 3 months from now anyway.
Exactly.
Because it's gonna change.
It's gonna change, if you want to. I mean, but here's the, you could
But
use
nobody's
this.
gonna look it up, that's the bottom line, and you could easily just put down, you know, the percentages and just say our company is da-da-da percent without even names.
Listen, a
Right.
year from now, you could still leave that up there, that date, is, you're still telling the truth, you know?
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
somebody somewhere might say, geez, that information's a year old. Well, I would agree with them, I think you should update it. Most people won't. I mean, here's the bottom line, gang. This should be a page in your listing presentation manual at the end that says, you know, other information. So if they give you an objection, you can turn to this as an objection handling tool and use this to handle the objection as a visual. Okay, gang? So let's role play that real quick.
Oh,
And what's it called? It's called the what close?
Ratio.
The ratio close. Now, we haven't read this to each other yet, have we?
No.
No? Okay, good. All right, so,
I talk to myself, it's okay.
Yeah, I can talk to myself too.
I do it all the time anyways.
two, actually, if you two could, role play, that would be great.
Okay, we gotta go way across.
You ready?
Okay,
Set,
1, 2,
go.
3, if you knew that by
If
paying
you
us
knew that
6%,
by
you
paying
would
us
use
6%,
4 cash,
you
you
could
could
put more cash in your pocket.
the other company 5%, you could pay us 6%, would you use? Well,
Let me just show you something.
here's what we call our listing celebration, our most listing service, how houses are listed for, what they actually sold. The average in our area is 96.3, my company's top negotiator list to sell is 98.7. And they of course are going to help you get your home sold. Literally, what we are saying to you is that by paying us 1% more, then you are getting 2.4%. And you see where this will get you a higher net. Great, all you need to do now is to approve this form and I will get you signed up.
If you use it by paying into 6%, you could put it in my account, then you could pay another company 5%.
Okay, switch.
6%, would you? Well, let me just do
Okay,
something that I think we put your money
by
in
paying us
this is what we call the
6%, you
our
can
list
put
selling
Our
ratio.
listed sell ratio and our listed sell ratio would track the houses on listed for, what they actually sold for. The average is 96.3%, my company's not negotiating, so it's 98.4.
Here's what we call
And
a
of course, I go ahead and get your house sold, literally.
And
What
what's
I'm
the list
saying is you always have to pay us 1% more, you're getting
What house is
2.4% more.
Can you see
And
what
you see,
Yeah,
yeah,
you know,
What I need to do now
and
is
then
simply
we'll get you a higher company. But all you do is simply
Let's
put
just
your
say
money
that.
in, you sign
correct the
it.
signatures and
And they, of course,
start packing
don't
up.
help me. It helps me, literally, what we were saying is by paying us 1% more, you get 2%, 2.4%.
Gang, fantastic job. Give your partner a round of applause.
Yay.
Come on, show them a little more love than that. You know,
Yeah,
come
yeah,
on. They're working so hard for you, right? Yeah, you've been awesome today. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. There was a lot of great energy today. Absolutely, you can keep an extra if you like. I'll make some revisions to that one that we last saw and we'll get it out to you just as a matter of convenience. Have you all signed into the sheet so I know who to email the revised version of that?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Oh, and the saleability checklist you were gonna email, or do I have to email you and ask? I wrote that down.
Just email him.
You know what? If you could email me to remind me, that'd be great, but I'll make a note of it too.
Okay.
I'll make a note of it. Okay, last page, you know, I used a different format for the flyer this time around, so you're gonna see around the office it says, you need to read this, okay? And this is in regard to next week's session. Now spread the word about this. You need this so bad, you're not alone. See, when I said you need to read this, I was talking about you, Louise, right? Have you ever met a seller that thought their home was worth more
All
than
the time.
than it really is? Absolutely, all the time, right? Well, next week, we're gonna handle the specific objection of they wanna price their home higher. But here's the reality. I mean, I hit you right between the eyes when I wrote this. In this lively, fun-packed session, you will walk away with the 3 best dialogues you could ever use to get a seller to price their house correctly. So in the next session, here's the bottom line, gang. If you cannot convince a seller to price their home correctly, and you take a listing overpriced, it will not what?
Sell.
It will not sell. How much money do you lose when a listing does not sell? If you calculated the amount of commission that you lost, you're wrong, because it's a lot more than that. You lost much more than that. Simply add up all the lost time and opportunity you could have spent working on other saleable listing opportunities and properties and buyers that are ready to buy. You're too busy marketing and working on and showing a listing that's not
never gonna
selling.
sell.
It's never selling. You're giving feedback, you're writing ads, you're doing open houses, all for nothing. You know what, gang? When I was an agent, I didn't do open houses. I didn't accompany showings. I focused on getting the listing priced right. I implemented my 30-day marketing plan. It didn't include me accompanying showings, and everything was on a lockbox because I knew that if I priced it right
It would sell.
and I did the basic marketing, the property would sell what? Itself, right? There's nothing you can do as an agent. There's no marketing in the world that you could possibly do. I love it when agents come to me and they say, John, my listing isn't selling. What else can I do? And then I start to go, and they go, besides lowering the price.
Yeah,
Because
right.
here's what agents say. They talk like sellers sometimes. They say, well, they already reduced it. Oh, give me a break. From where to where, though? You know, they've already made an adjustment. They can't go down anymore. They can't afford it. Well, maybe they should consider a short sale. Maybe they should consider taking it off the market. Well, if I take it off the market, then I'll be listless, and I won't have any listings. You know, the best way to attract good quality buyers is to have a listing that's priced right. You don't get good buyer leads. You don't have good traffic in open houses on listings that are overpriced. It's a dream. It's a pipe dream. It's not happening. Now, there is no worse publicity than having your sign on someone's front lawn with your name rider on the lawn, and people drive back and forth for 6 months, and then the property never sells, and then another agent comes in, puts a sign in the yard, has the guts and the fortitude and or the words or the ability, or went to this session before, and got the seller to be realistic with their pricing. That sign goes in the yard with their name rider on it, and a sold sign replaces that a few weeks later. There's no worse publicity than having that.
That's scary. Really scary.
Now, here's my point in here. I said, don't be that agent. Show up and learn more so you can earn more. Remember, worse than having no listings at all is having listings
They don't sell.
that will not sell. Okay, gang? The only reason a listing does not sell is because of pricing and the reason why it's not selling because of pricing is that the agent who listed the property didn't have the words and was not able to effectively convey to the seller all the reasons why the seller will net more money and get their home sold faster when they price it more realistically. So I hope you join me for next week's session. Again, thank you all for coming today.
We're gonna handle those objections.
Yes, we are. We're gonna hit them straight on.
I'll make a
And
list.
you'll come out of that meeting a different agent again, yes.
You really recommend lock boxes? I despise those.
Black boxes? How else
Yeah.
can they get in there?
Yeah, but I
Can I
mean,
tell you
why
why?
should,
Would you like to role play? Let's say you're the seller and you don't want a lockbox.
I don't want a
And I'm
lockbox.
the agent, and I would say, well, John, I can certainly appreciate and understand your concern. What is it that, what is it about a lockbox that concerns you?
I want you there, not
Okay,
them just coming into my home.
all right, no, I can appreciate that. So, what is it about me being there that you think will help get your home sold? I'm confused, I don't understand.
Oh, okay, so I can see it now.
All right, well, you can
The
because you're an
house,
agent.
the house
The house is gonna
sells
sell
itself.
Yes, yeah, okay.
Okay.
So now, but let's say you're a seller and you keep on me, right? Cause I've
Okay.
got more to say to a seller about that than just that.
All right, okay.
And so, well, let's say the seller says to me, well, I want you to show it because, you know,
You
you're
know
gonna sell
everything
it.
about it.
And
God bless you.
I would say, well, actually, it's the house that sells itself, but I have more to say about that. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you've interviewed other agents for the job of marketing your home, haven't you? Right? And let me ask you a question, when they said they were gonna show your property, and have you heard about this before, that they ask, what do they ask you to do when the house is being shown? They ask you to what?
Leave.
They ask you to leave. But what blows my mind, and I don't understand this, is that the agent, the listing agent, shows up. Let me ask you this question, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, and now think about this, and think about it before you answer. Why is the agent asking you to leave the house when the house is
So
being
that
shown?
the buyers will feel comfortable looking at the house.
So the buyers will feel
And they can
comfortable
ask
looking at the house,
questions.
so the buyers will stay there longer. The longer they stay, the more they see it as their home. Would you agree with that simple
Yes.
premise? But yet what blows my mind, and I've been on showings with buyers and the listing agent has showed up, but here's what happens in reality when the homeowner is gone. All of a sudden, the person whose name is on the sign in the front lawn shows up, and they are the representative of the seller.
Yeah,
How comfortable does that make the buyer feel? Even worse than the seller actually being there, because now the representative of the seller is there. Okay? It doesn't make the buyer feel more comfortable. Here's another sad fact in reality, and this is what really happens. You list with an agent that promises you they're going to be on the showings, and here's what happens. In reality, sometimes they're late, and they can't help it, because your home, we're gonna list your home for $400,000. But that agent that you listed with was just showing a home for $1 million, and the buyers wanted to stay. So let me ask you a question. If the buyers are ready to write up an offer on that $1 million home, or they have a potential, maybe showing on your house that someone may or may not buy your property, and it's already the 10th person that's come by to see the property, are they gonna be late, yes or no? And be honest.
Of course.
They're gonna be late, and that buyer may not wait because they have another property to see, and so therefore, either they see your property very quickly for 5 minutes, because they gotta get in and out, because it has to be an accompanied showing, they can't get into the property, there's no lockbox, they have to now rush off to the next home, and they don't even remember what they saw in your home. Remember, the longer they stay in your property, the greater the chances are that they will buy it. So you don't want to list with an agent. Here's another thing, let's say your agent shows up on time, but now they have an opportunity not to list the property, but to write up an offer on that $1 million property. Somebody's actually going to buy it. And they're in your house, and they've been with the buyer for 20 minutes now, and they're looking at their watch, and they're like, you guys have any questions? I have another appointment. I need to go write up an offer on $1 million property. I don't have time to sit here and show you a property that you may or may not buy for $400,000. So I've got to hit the road. If you want to come back and see it again, give me a call. Let's go. And they're rushing your agent that you hired, that you asked that agent to be company showings now, is pushing your buyer. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm telling you about the reality of what really goes on when you're not home. And can you see why? Can you see that agents work on commission? They work on a percentage of the sale price. And so they're going to move in the direction in which they're being pushed and pulled in most cases, and sometimes they really don't even have a choice. They could have good intentions and be a really good, concerning real estate agent, but sometimes they're being pushed and pulled in directions that they don't even know they can't do. They can't, control it. And so who sacrifices? You do, by not having a lockbox on your property. This could make the difference of getting your home sold or not sold, because your agent didn't recommend that you put a lockbox on your
I'll
property.
lockbox on all properties.
There you
After
go.
that.
And you know what, if there's more that I could say about the law, sometimes they'll say to you, well, I'm concerned about security. I don't want people coming in and out of my house, because sometimes they say, because remember I asked you a question, what is it about a lockbox? I was using the objection handling process, and I asked you the question, what is it about a lockbox that concerns you? And you say safety. I don't want to be taking a shower and all of a sudden someone comes in my house and they're showing my property. And I said, well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna use the type of lockbox where I'm gonna give you the code, and I'm gonna ask you to put the key in when you know the property's gonna be shown. Or when you're out of the house, put the key in the box so that we can get the property shown. So when you're at home and you want your privacy and you're concerned about that, I'll give you the code, you can just simply take the key out. How does that make sense?
That's a good idea.
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
I went to the house to show the house, and the agent gave me a code to, I walk over there, it's opened.
Mine was open
No
too.
key, cover's gone.
Yeah,
There's-
I had
you
the same
can't-
thing
You
in
can't get in the
Springfield.
house. What happened is the sellers took the key out because I don't know, they forgot to put it in.
Yeah, well, that's a problem.
But that's
And they
their
can't get
loss,
that
but
home
then
till
your
then.
loss too.
So, now I handled the close, and then I would simply say, you know, about the lockbox, and I would simply say, do you have any other questions, John? See, John even closed himself a couple of times in that role play, that
Oh, yeah.
dialogue, he was telling me, okay, I got it, you got me, I understand, I'll do it. And at that point, I would say, I would hand him the pen and he would sign. See, sometimes a good presentation, the close is extremely easy and extremely natural. It's when you have a weak presentation that you don't even feel comfortable closing at all. Because you have a weak presentation. You see, gang, if you know what to say, when to say it, and how to say it, it makes all the difference in the world, doesn't it? Okay?
But yours flows so naturally, John.
Because he's done it for so
Oh, well,
long.
yeah, you've done it
Yes.
a period of
Yeah,
time.
and
And
practice.
I gotta tell you, gang, you know what, I wasn't born with that. It's just that I've used it so many times, and I also think logically, and I think simple, you know, I just think logic and simple, I say, okay, and I also think this, if all else fails, gang, and you don't know the words, hold this in your mind, what's in it for them? See, if you just focus on the benefit of the seller, remember what Judy was saying earlier, she goes, I didn't care that other agent, the seller said, I don't care the other agent had to spend money. That's not that seller's problem. You know, talk about what's in it for them. All the objection handling techniques I gave you was, if you notice, John, some agents would say, well, the reason why I put lockboxes on properties is because it's not the best use of my time to show properties.
Yeah.
That's their that has nothing to do with the seller. How does that benefit the seller, right? So again, focus on that and you'll come up with the word sometimes. You'll even surprise yourself sometimes of what you come up with, so.
Oh, I have already.
Great, awesome. Keep learning, stay in school, gang, stay in school. School is never out for the pro. All right, have a great night, gangs.
Yep,
Take
have
care.
a good weekend.
I'll talk to you all soon.
Email us all.
I will, I'll email, I have a list of all
You
your, of all
can't
the
take
people here.
those.
Yeah.
That's right.
Put us in the address book.
Do I qualify for the class? I know I was late.